You're listening to the Bethel Community Church Podcast. Our podcast normally showcases our weekly sermons here in Chicago at 7601 West Foster. Now, podcasts are great, but they do not replace the care and community you receive from the local church or from your local pastor. So we encourage you to come, join our community, or contact us to help you find a community in your area. We pray the Lord speaks to you as you listen. Enjoy.
Kids, again, I'm so glad that you're here. And if you didn't get it yet, there are some sermon notes specially made for the kids with some crayons in the back. There's coloring pages and some other stuff and notes. So if you haven't gotten that yet, feel free to go back and grab one. I guess adults too, if you want to color during this, that's okay. There's no rules about that. We'll be okay with that. But hey, I want to start with a little poll question that I put out to the kids of our church this week. Kids, you're here. Maybe you answered this poll question. Maybe you didn't. I'm not sure. I put it up on Facebook and Instagram. And my question was this: what is your favorite snack? What's your favorite treat? What's your favorite candy? What's your go-to? And I heard a variety of responses. Some of them didn't surprise me. Some of them did. I mean, there was like Oreos, classic, right? There was cannolis. That was a little bit more niche, a little bit more interesting maybe in some ways. There's Chick-fil-A. Someone said Chick-fil-A right there. Yes, Chick-fil-A. Sun chips. People love sun chips. That's a big one as well. People cheering. Nutella? Oh, that's a good one. Now, here's my question to the kids. I heard a lot of responses. I think I got back 15 different favorite snacks, treats. What if I told you that I had every single one of them here today and you could have them after the service? Would you believe me? Man, I don't know. I heard an adult say yes. I think that was a hopeful yes. Is this just for kids or adults too? What if I told you it was all here? Now listen, that'd be tricky. Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday. How would we do that, right? I mean, it's never happened before. There's that working against it too. I mean, you've never seen that before where you came to church and someone's like, hey, I got you your favorite treat and snack and it's here in this building today and you can have it. But how about this? We don't snack here in the sanctuary. We'll get crumbs everywhere, right? It seems like a risk for me to get snacks knowing that it could be a mess here, right? There's so many things. What do you think, kids? Did I get snacks for you to have afterwards? What do you think? And more adults, yes. Which is interesting that the adults, it's good. You're in favor of me giving sugar and snacks to your kids afterwards. There's some hope out there, but I don't know. It's never been done before. This seems like maybe a good idea, but something that can never happen or impossible. What would it take for you to really believe? What it might take for you to really believe that I actually did get that for you. Every single one of your snacks, and some of the adults submitted stuff too, and yeah, I did get those too. Some of them, not all of them. But what it would really take for you to believe, what would really help for you to believe is if you saw them. If I brought them out here today, and you could see them all scattered on the stage, and you're like, yeah, there's my Chick-fil-A that I ordered. There's my Oreos. There's my Twix bar. There's the Nerds that I like, the gummy kind. Those are my favorite. If you saw it, you would believe it, because when we believe, it's like that saying, seeing is believing. It's one thing to be told it, but when it seems impossible, seeing is believing. Today, the passage that we're looking at another I am statement of Jesus. And this one is so unbelievable. It's so impossible to fathom that Jesus could say this about himself and actually truly be it. People cannot believe him for just his words saying it. It takes them actually seeing it to believe it. And when they see it, it conjures up the belief in their heart and their life. Belief will change the way you live, won't it? I mean, if you saw the snacks up here and you saw them and you could believe it, you'd start to work up an appetite for that. You would know with certainty what you could have. Belief has a way of conjuring up the way that we live and impacting it. Actually, the whole book of John has had this idea of belief scattered through the whole time. We're going to be in John 11 today. Any guesses how many times the word believe has been used before John chapter 11? No one said it, but it's 58. I didn't really give you a chance. Who would know? That's very niche, random. 58 times it's been used. 58 times it's been used. This theme running, trying to bring about belief. And by the time that the book is over, it's 98 times that belief has been used. It's a theme, and we're going to see it in our passage today, and I just want to give you a heads up on that to be looking for it. But as the book builds, it's talking about this belief that it's trying to bring about. Right in chapter 1, verse 7, it says, he came as a witness to bear witness about the light that all might believe through him. Believe through him. John 1:12 says, but to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. And then how about this one, kids? I think you know it, John 3:16. Yeah. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish and have eternal life. Jesus' coming is entirely centered around this idea of people seeing him and believing. And today's belief, the belief that he's trying to bring about for the disciples and the audience around is so unfathomable. It's so hard to believe. They can't take his words for it. They have to actually see it to believe it. Turn in your Bibles to John chapter 11. John chapter 11, we're going to be reading through it. Take a couple verses at a time. I encourage you to look at it. There's a number of things that are repeated throughout it. I encourage you to be on the lookout for that word believe as we read through it. Let's start with the first 4 verses here, shall we? Here we go. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God might be glorified through it. I want to stop there for just a second. There's a man who's sick. Not just any man, but a friend of Jesus. Someone that it says he loves. I mean, Jesus is going around healing people that are total strangers, right? Certainly if there's someone that he's going to heal, his friend would have maybe special treatment here, right? So they remind him, hey, this is the person that you love, and he's sick right now, and it's not looking good. So the request is brought to Jesus, and his response is so important. And actually, just a bit of a side note that's important for this sermon, but anytime you read narrative text here in the Bible, dialogue is so important. Anytime you see something spoken and quoted word for word, it is so important that you take notice of that, and we see that here in this passage. Jesus' response to this request being brought to him is so interesting. He says, this illness does not end in death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God might be glorified in it. Spoiler alert. He tells you from the beginning of the story what's going to happen. And what he says is going to happen is that this does not end in Lazarus being dead. That's quite a spoiler, right? My family just watched the movie Sing 2. Kids, you ever watch that movie? Any of you see that? Couple of you, it's kind of fun. Yeah, okay, nice. What if you knew everything that was going to happen in the beginning of it? You'd watch the whole movie with the certainty that everything works out okay. I used to watch old Bulls tapes from the 90s and get nervous that Michael Jordan wouldn't hit the shot against Brian Russell. I don't know, I would, even though I knew the ending. Nora and Sarah, they love to read books. But they flip, at some point, I've seen them do it. They flip to the back and they read the last couple pages. Anyone do that? They're stressed out. What's going to happen? I got to know. I got to read that before I get to that. I got to know everything that happens, and so that they can read the rest of the book with the certainty of what's going to happen. Jesus here gives the certainty of what is going to happen. He gives them the confidence that they need to have to know that Lazarus is not going to die. Jesus tells them the ending for the same reason that maybe Nora or Sarah might read the end of the book first, so that they could know and that they could believe as everything that unfolds. Because I'm telling you something right now, before we even read more. It looks bad now for Lazarus. It looks worse in a couple of minutes. But to know this from this front, the spoiler. Now here's one more thing, just the repetition in this passage. Jesus gives a spoiler here right from the front. But he actually tells them 3 times that this does not end in Lazarus' death. Verse 4, verse 11, and verse 23. We're going to see each one of them. But that's important as we talk about belief in telling you something. They're not getting it from just telling. They're not understanding or believing just by Jesus telling them that they're going to believe. Man, I told you I had all the snacks, but it'd be different if you saw them. If you could see with your eyes. And I'm not going to show you yet, but here's a bin. I'm telling you they're in here. You don't see them yet, but I'm telling you now, I got them. They're in here. You probably believe more. But you know what would really help your belief is if I just open this up and you could see everything inside. I'm not going to do that. I'm just telling you. Do you believe? Well, I'm telling you, they didn't believe Jesus when he told them either. Check out what happens next. Verse 5. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after that, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you. And are you going to go there again?" And Jesus said, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." After saying these things, he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." There's the other spoiler. The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he meant taking a rest in sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus has died, and for your sake, I am glad that I am not there, so you may believe. But let us go to him." So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go that we may die with him." Jesus waits 2 days. I don't know about you, but if I get worried about an emergency, I'm probably going to move a little bit quickly towards that event, right? I want you to imagine you're watching a movie, and it's like the climax, and the hero of the story has to respond to the danger, and he's told, "You have to respond now. Someone needs help, desperate help right now. You need to come quickly." And he goes, "Okay." And the music has crescendoed, and it's super intense. You feel it there. What's he going to do? And then he walks to the fridge, grabs a Coke, sits down, and just hangs out. You're like, what? I mean, shouldn't you, go? But he doesn't. He's going to do something else for 2 days before he picks up on the tension and the plot of Lazarus being sick. It's unthinkable. But this is all part of what Jesus said he was going to do, and the reason why all of this was going to happen. Number one, that the Son of God would be glorified. If Jesus is going to stir their belief, he's going to bring them in this story to a situation that seems totally impossible. If they're going to truly believe what he says in the I am statement about himself, he needs to bring them to a place of feeling this utter impossibility, to a place where belief would have to be cemented by their eyes in seeing and understanding what would happen. So Jesus says to his disciples 2 days later, "Okay, let's go to Judea." This is where he just was. Remember a couple weeks ago we talked about how they tried to stone Jesus and kill Jesus? That's referenced here. They haven't forgotten the fact that they almost lost their life, that Jesus almost lost his life here. So they're like, really? Now you want to go back there? Here's what we get as the reader. The impossibility of the situation has just increased. Because their belief is faced with trusting and believing that Lazarus won't die and that Jesus will be glorified in the face of their own personal danger. Now they got a little bit more skin in the game to believe that Jesus would actually do that. Their belief in the spoiler that Jesus gave them that this would not end in death for Lazarus takes another hard hit. In verse 14, when he says, Lazarus has died. Okay, he's not just sick. We're not just going to Judea where it's dangerous. Now Lazarus has died. In this moment, it looks like Jesus is messed up. I mean, didn't he just say that this does not end in Lazarus' death? It looks like he didn't go quick enough. It looks like those 2 days were an issue, were a problem that he didn't go. Their belief has to be shaken. Jesus said he would save Lazarus, but here he's acknowledging himself that Lazarus is dead. It must be over and belief must be gone. But Jesus again points to what he's doing through it. He says in verse 11 that Lazarus is asleep and Jesus will awake him. It's another spoiler. It's another time for Jesus to say, I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm telling you who I am. And he gives this clarifying statement of how he gets the glory. The way he's going to get the glory is this. He's going to awaken Lazarus. Do you believe that? I mean, it was hard enough to believe before. It was hard enough to believe before that he wasn't going to die, that this didn't end in death. But now, to believe that Jesus would awaken him, the glory that Jesus is going to get from this is their belief. It's the first time in this narrative, verse 15 there, that the word believe is used. And we're going to see the repetition build throughout it. It says, and for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe, but let us go to him. We're going to see that repetition continue in the next couple of verses. The belief that Jesus says he will get seems impossible, though. Lazarus being dead, how will he be alive? To go back to Judea, how do you survive that? Have you ever been there? Maybe where the disciples are right now in this moment. Where belief seems far off. Where the promises of God seem distant. Where his words seem to disconnect with the reality that you see in the world around you. Have you ever ventured into these moments of your walk in the pastures? Where you don't know what God is doing and you don't know if you can believe him to lead you. Has your belief ever been faced with the impossible? Has the person of Jesus ever seemed insufficient and incapable? And maybe even like the one who messed all this up. That's the moment here. Now, Thomas's response has become one of my favorite things about this passage. He's been given the spoiler twice now, right? And yet, his response is, verse 16, look at it, let us go that we may die with him. Listen, he not only doesn't believe that Lazarus ends alive, he thinks none of them end alive. To him, not only is his belief Jesus is incapable of raising him from the dead, but he thinks Jesus is incapable of even protecting all of them from death. Let that doubt sink in for a moment. Look what happens in verse 17 as they travel to where Lazarus is. Verse 17 says, and when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and she met him. But Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." There's the third spoiler alert there. Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, he shall live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." Lazarus has been in the tomb now for 4 days. I love the way that the narrative builds, because we hear the words of Jesus, yet everything we see seems to go against what he's saying is going to happen. Things happen to bodies when they've been in the tomb for days on end. The thought of just a dead body being awoken, that seems impossible. But a man in the tomb for 4 days, that sounds like a horror zombie movie. I want to zoom in on verse 21 here. Martha says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Listen, she acknowledges the power of Jesus. She believes that Jesus could have prevented the death. She knows that power, but the belief that Jesus is after is a belief that she does not possess yet, because she does not believe that he can do anything now that he's already dead. That's where her belief stops. She doesn't think that that could happen. Had you been here before, well, maybe something would have been different, but now it's too late. And Jesus speaks about this as he gives the third spoiler in verse 23. Clear as day, he says, "Your brother is going to rise again." And she again exhibits belief as she understands that to mean salvation and eternity in the presence of God. Hear me, it's beautiful that she believes this. But the belief that Jesus is after and that he's going to demonstrate and show about himself, the power that resides in who he is even beyond that to which she speaks of. And it seems so impossible for her to believe that she couldn't even fathom it. He's going to have to show them. But before he shows them, he tells them very specifically the belief that he's after. The follower of Jesus must know this about Jesus. They must understand this about his power. They must understand this about their own condition and what Jesus will do about it. Look at verse 25, and it's our next I am statement. He says, "I am the resurrection and the life." And then there's all this repetition of the word believe afterwards within it. Jesus needs people to know and for people to believe this about him, that he has the power over death, that in him is the only way to life, not just here on this life, but when our time on earth is over. What he is saying is that he has the power to raise life into that which is dead. Part of the identity of Jesus is one who can offer the opportunity for those who believe the chance to never die. He can bring life to that which shows signs of death and decay. And he says that to Martha, whose brother has been in the tomb for 4 days. And he asks her, "Do you believe this?" The climax is coming and the odds are stacked against Jesus. And he asks this in the thickness of all these reasons to doubt. "Do you believe that this is who I am?" And her response is interesting. She says, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." This is great that she expresses this belief about his identity. But notice she still cannot affirm the belief that Jesus is after, starting in the beginning of this passage, the glory that is going to go to God for this. Because what Jesus is asking these people to believe has never happened before. They've never seen it before. It seems impossible. The body's been in there for 4 days. They would have to see it to believe it. It would seem like progress that Martha's even able to express this belief of him being the Son of God. But hear me on this. Them understanding that Jesus is the resurrection and the life is so foundational that if they don't get the fact that he has the power over death, they don't understand why it is in which he came. Their belief is resting on this ability to understand this about the person of Jesus. What Martha needs to know about Jesus, the Son of God, is that he has the power over death. Look at verses 28 through 37, and it says this. She went and she called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and he's calling you." And when she heard it, she rose quickly and she went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were out at her house consoling her saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Does that sound familiar? When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying?" They're still fixed on keeping him from dying. Notice that Mary says the same thing that her sister Martha did. Same thing, same line. They have belief in the power of Jesus, but see here, they're missing it. In their mind, the goal of Jesus would have been to prevent the death of Lazarus. And that's how the Son of God would have gotten his glory. But Jesus, in this situation, was not about preventing his death. He stayed 2 more days, right? He stayed 2 days longer so that the glory would be revealed, that they could believe that he has power over death as the resurrection and the life. Verse 36 through 39, then starting in verse 38, then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. And Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead for 4 days." Notice Martha's response. This is really important, right? Dialogue is really important. She just expressed in verses earlier, "I believe that you're the Son of God," but I'd said she doesn't believe that her brother is going to rise. This is the proof of it. Because when he says to roll away the stone, her response is this: "It's going to smell bad." She thinks there's still a dead body in there. She thinks Lazarus is still dead. Look at verse 40. Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" Oh man, he brings it back. He brings it back. Didn't I tell you this in the beginning? I told you, I gave you the spoiler. You should be reading this whole story with the certainty and the belief of that, but they couldn't believe because they had never seen it. The spoiler that Lazarus would not end up dead at the end of this. Did you think this was impossible? Did you think I don't have the power over death? Did you think that abundant life did not involve a resurrection into new life? Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Their belief was so limited, but seeing has a way of bringing about believing. Verse 41, so they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and he said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me." When he said these things, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out, his hands and his feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Go to verse 45. We cannot miss this. This is the cherry on top right here. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and who had seen what he did, what? Believed in him. Because you know what happened? They saw it. They saw the guy who was dead that they knew was dead. They saw him come alive. Jesus' prayer is so awesome in the midst of it. It's honestly so underappreciated that he talks about knowing that the Father hears him, hears his heart, that this would happen so that people would believe. It's kind of like I feel like it's a little bit of an inside joke between God and Jesus here, the Father and the Son here. It was like, hey, I know you listened to me. I knew this was going to happen. We knew that this was going to happen, but we did this so that all these people here, that they would know that we could do this. We knew we could do this. I love that. Speaking of voice, because, that's interesting. You heard me. He just, remember in I Am the Door, he talked about the voice and the sheep know the voice of the shepherd. Speaking of voice, Lazarus responds to the voice of Jesus. The richness of it is great. The sheep hear the voice of the shepherd. Here the shepherd calls and Lazarus hears. The sheep hear even when they're dead. The power of the voice of the shepherd calls to life the sheep who are dead. The resurrection and the life calls to the dead, and the dead come to life. Seeing has a way of believing. No one saw this coming. No one could have believed. Thomas thought they were all going to die. Check this out. Dude, it's all here. Kids, I'm telling you, it was not easy. I have cannolis here. Listen, you're like, how'd he get Chick-fil-A on Sunday? I got you a gift card. I hope that helps. I wasn't about to get you an old Chick-fil-A sandwich, but I could have. Maybe lemonade or something like that. Hello? How about this? Pringles, it's got to be the pizza one for someone. It was pizza Pringles. You got to have pizza Pringles. It's all here, kids. And I'm telling you, after the service, you can come up. And just rummage through there and take whatever you want and don't spill it on the ground. Nerds, yeah, she's right. Nerds are in there. Seeing, I know. But after the service, you got to wait till after the service. I'm telling you, they're not going to go anywhere. Here, I'll do this for you, okay? You can see it. You can see it. Good thing this is at the end of the sermon. The people see Lazarus come back to life. And they receive much more than their friend. Much more than their brother. Verse 45 says they receive belief. And this belief is so powerful. Fun study for you this afternoon. Check out the next chapter. John chapter 12. The belief is so powerful that the religious leaders look to put Lazarus to death because his testimony is so powerful. And it says people are believing that so powerfully they want to put him to death. That's how powerful it was for them to see. Because as they're seeing, they see, man, he had the power to raise someone from the dead. Goes back to the conversation between Jesus and Martha in verse 25. If you believe in me, you shall never die. He ultimately showed them that at the grave of Lazarus. But I'm telling you something, it wasn't just about physical death, was it? We know that now, but how did he show them that then? He ultimately would have to show them that also with their eyes. And he did again another impossible resurrection to life so that seeing was believing. But this time it was not at the tomb of Lazarus. It was at a different tomb in John chapter 20. The tomb of Jesus himself. They run to the tomb. They see it's empty. Listen to verse 8 of chapter 20. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and he believed. And as he believes and sees what his friend Jesus has just done in raising himself up, it's much more than a physical resurrection. When Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life, he's talking spiritually. To call those who are dead spiritually to life, which is amazing because in and of ourselves, we can do nothing to save ourselves. We cannot call ourselves back to life. I cannot call you back to life. I am not a resurrection. Anything else in this world is not. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. So when he says this, he proves it at his own tomb that he has the power over sin, over death. So whatever you wrestle with, whatever you struggle with, whatever sin you feel like you are entangled in, is nothing too far from the power of that one, Jesus, the resurrection and life. Do you believe that? That's a word for our world to hear right now. It would be easy to look around and see the world and just have fear or anger or be overwhelmed with how saturated in sin, evil and greed and hatred and racism, all sorts of things you could look at and say, man, it's a mess out there. Can you say, our Jesus, our shepherd, our God, he's the resurrection in the life to call to himself out of death, spiritual death, and he has that power. Do you believe that? Kids, I'm so glad that you're here today. And you've been hearing about Jesus all year long, and I'm so glad for that. And maybe today you hear this message and you're like, man, I don't know if I've ever said that I believe in Jesus. I don't know if I've ever given him my life. I don't know. I just encourage you right now, tap your parent. Tell them you want to talk about it later. And for all the rest of us, I hope this stirs hope in us to surrender ourselves to the resurrection and the life, but also to know in the midst of evil who our God is and the power he's capable of. This message to us is that the one Jesus can do what seems impossible. Victory has arrived in the empty tomb. The ending is known, and we can live with certainty now because we know the ending of this story. Believe that, receive that, and live that. Let's pray. God, we worship you. God, we respond to you and in belief, God. And I pray that that belief now in our hearts and lives, God, that you would stir that up. That you would cause us to respond in worship and submission and confidence in who you are. God, I pray for the belief in the hearts of our kids who are here today. God, we know there's so many things ahead for them that could challenge that belief. God, I pray that you would strengthen them, that they would know and live by faith. In Jesus' name, amen.